SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. When former AFL player and two-time Hawthorn Grand Final winner Dean Anderson became CEO at leading teams in 2022, he brought all of his on-field knowledge and leadership insight to not only grow the leading team's business, but maintain its high-performing ethos. Today, Dean leaves playing at the elite level to his son, Noah Anderson, a rising star at the Gold Coast Suns. But he's still immersed in the sport, coaching over 300 games for the Scotch Stars, Women's Community Level AFL, and taking on his 10th year at the St Kilda Football Club board. But Dean says the greatest impact on his leadership style and success was the expert mentorship from his coach Alan Jeans, who in the 80s led St Kilda and Hawthorn to a total of 4 premierships. So I asked Dean how he got into footy in the first place.
It was the 1970s. It was quite a unique period. Football was culturally significant, and I was living in the outer metropolitan fringe, and we were a working class family. But in our house, the football was everywhere. It was football placemats. My older brother had football cards, Scanlon's footy cards, football jumpers, kids wore to school. We didn't get a lot of exposure at the high level. But of the exposure that we got, you certainly got a taste for it.
Yeah.
And I think as a kid then, when you spent a lot of time outside, kicking the footy in the street and footy at school, so it was very easy to fall in love with it.
Yeah. And you obviously had an affinity for it. You obviously had a natural flair to play the game as opposed to cricket or any other sport.
Did I have a flair? Well, I didn't start with any flair.
Okay.
So I still recall my father's feedback when I was 7 and I first started playing, which was, I'm not quite sure if this is the game for you.
Wow.
Which is interesting, yeah.
Wow. And so what propelled you forward?
I think just finding your way. You know, I was a 7-year-old playing under 10s and finding your way and loving being out there but not really knowing your purpose.
Yeah.
Eventually I started to build a form of skill.
Yeah. Okay, interesting.
I could run as well, so that was my one wood, I could run. I was a reasonably successful young athlete, so I was a middle distance runner. So I went overseas, represented Australia, I was in my teens, and people would always ask me, what do you want to do, footy or aths? Because I had to make a call at some stage, and it was the team, the love of playing in a team. And, the characteristic of athletics is you go out there and you're competing on your own. I did love the athletics relays, but the individual side of athletics versus the team element of football was a no-brainer for me. I really loved it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then from playing at the elite level of footy, you obviously won 2 premierships at Hawthorn. You've been coaching and you've been on the board at St Kilda for 10 years now. You've really had almost a 360-degree view of the game. What lessons have you learned in leadership or otherwise, do you think?
Oh, it's a rich tapestry. It's woven with the highs and the lows, There's blood, sweat, tears, anxiety, everything, love, loss. So all those things are in footy. 50 years I've been involved in football this year, actually. This is my 50th straight year. And through that 50-year journey, it's very well publicised, all the developments in not just the game, but the importance of understanding and embracing inclusion.
Yes.
And, the role of Indigenous players in sport was significant.
Yes.
So I played in the game where Nicky Winmar lifted his jumper at Victoria Park.
Yeah.
So I'm quite proud of our connection that we have through that and how far that part of the game has gone. So I think as a player, the extremes of feelings in football are really there. So, missing selection for a grand final, which I did, being an emergency.
Yeah.
So, being able to ride the bumps, be resilient, pick yourself up, have good people around you. I've met a lifelong partner very early on, Fiona. So having that good person is really important for you in football. Yeah. Preparation is so important, making sure that when it's your time, you can deliver. And preparation is the great way to achieve that. So I worked through that pretty early. I think you learn as a player that you really need to know what your A game is and feel like you belong because you can actually contribute. The team dynamic with my kids, I've played a lot of sport. It's like one thing I focus on with them is the importance of team. So my annus mirabilis year was 1989, the Hawthorn v Geelong premiership.
Yeah.
I was not one of the star players. Easy just to put me in the bottom six.
Right.
But my performance was such that I was actually performed in the top six. But the learning from all that was the importance of knowing your role. I was young and I could run.
Yes.
And that was required in the day, increasingly as the game went on. And we got a lot of injuries, Hawthorn that day. So I think we were down to about 15 or 16 fit players at the end. What resonated with me that day was how I was cared for by the coaching staff and the leaders, the older players. They were so good at Hawthorn culturally at that time. So good at genuine care for their teammates and making them feel important. So I learned that.
Yeah.
Coaching, I think coaching's different. You still enjoy the thrill of the competition, but you really need to know your craft. Yeah, you need to know your craft in the sense that when you speak to a player, you need to give them something.
Yeah.
They're looking for learnings. So it's the way you manage relationships, very important. So you need to empower your team as a coach. I just did a coaching camp on the weekend with my girls, and a big thing that came out of that was that they actually need to control on the ground what's happening, because I can't. So it's really to teaching them and talking to them and working with them around making decisions. Like if I purposely turned up late so that I test them as to what they would do.
Right.
Yeah, so just things like that. Coaching, I love coaching because I love the interpersonal piece, right? And watching people thrive.
Yeah.
So that's the coaching. The board role is, that's really serious stuff. A lot of the culturally significant issues that play out through football.
Yeah.
So the board role, many people don't really understand what it is.
Right.
But it's an accountability piece. We're there to protect club on behalf of the members. So making sure that people who are employed by the club are held to account. So it's a really important role, and you need to make really considered decisions because they're big ones.
It's really at the pointy end of leadership, really.
Very pointy end,
Yeah.
yes.
In your opinion, then, what is a high-performing leader in your mind?
I think a great high-performing leader needs to cover both the dynamic piece, which is the culture piece, but also be a good performer. This is my craft. I know what I'm doing. And that's how you become inspirational. You get the gravitas because you can actually deliver on what we do, what is our skill set as a business.
Yeah.
The dynamic piece in my 30-year banking career was often overshadowed by talking about what we're doing rather than actually investing in how we do it as a team.
Right.
Yeah. And often the more that's going on over on the mechanical side, the less gets invested in the dynamics, which is the how we do things, which is the leading teams piece, which is fundamentally important for a high-performing leader. Have a balance between the two. Yep. Be a role model within your group. This is probably the most important piece. Be a role model, reward good behaviour and call out poor behaviour.
Yeah.
People would hear the leading team's high-performance model, and that's the model which underpins the investment in culture. So it's having relationships that are deep, strong professional relationships that are built on trust, mutual trust and respect. Having a framework, this is how we want to behave, and then having genuine conversations because you've got good relationships. Those three things feed up into what our purpose is.
Yeah.
So leading teams is really easy, right? It's great we're all aligned to the purpose because we want to help individuals and teams be high performing. So anything we do, we reflect on, is this good for our purpose? So the purpose can actually get us back on track.
Yes.
So the strong relationships, investing in those, making sure we know it's very clear what are our behaviours that I want to role model as a leader and reward people for doing the same thing but also challenge them for not. So for us it's things like making sure genuine care for each other, finding ways to collaborate, being innovative for the group, taking responsibility. When it's your turn to take responsibility, you need to take responsibility. And the last behaviour which is really overarching is we live the model.
Yes.
Which is the relationships, agreed behavioural framework and the conversations which hold it all together.
Yeah. When you're talking about genuine conversations, responsibility, accountability, for a lot of people that can be quite confronting but so necessary as part of the leading team's model, would you say?
Absolutely. It's made so much easier when you have the relationships.
Yeah.
Leading teams, we lever the tools that we have to actually help businesses build relationships, and it's investing the time.
What drew you to the leading team's business after so long in corporate banking?
Well, I was lucky enough to be exposed to Ray McLean, the co-founder of Leading Teams, in 1995, I think it was, as a client at St Kilda Football Club.
Yeah.
And what he brought to sport was revolutionary. So to be clear, AFL football for a long time was to belong, you play well on the field, you play well off the field as well.
Yeah.
You look back now in hindsight and you go, well, playing well off the field, is that really good for optimal team performance? So it gets to the point where you go on a camp, pre-season camp, and you work really hard during the day, but then you'll be out till 4 a.m. drinking. All clubs did it. Right. What Ray did and the impact he's had on that industry is phenomenal. And so I admire him for that. And it's had such a huge impact. That's always sat in my mind. So corporate banking, you're really caught on the mechanical treadmill of 4 or 5 transactions on the go at once. You just don't stop. You just keep going. So in that part of my life, I lost that sort of connection to the team dynamic because it becomes very competitive internally. Who's doing the most deals? Who's making the most money? And then you're chasing money. And it's I got tired of that. And so I came out of that thinking, I've done that. I want something fresh. And when I saw the CEO role at Leading Teams, I thought, this is perfect. I played footy with Justin Peck and Daniel Healy. They're both long-term leading facilitators. They're good colleagues. I love culture and leadership. I've coached for, I think, 25 years now. It sort of just fits really well. Yeah. The other thing for me is what I've learned about leadership in 2 years sort of outstrips 20 years. I think it's galvanised things. It's sort of brought it all together. Yeah. And for me, it's been great. And this extends to family, right? It's like what I've done is a self-audit through, Ray as my mentor. And he goes, okay, well, you need to work out what is it about you that's really effective as a leader. So I worked that out pretty easily. And that's the caring, the loyal, I'm invested. And then through the process, we worked out, well, what that can do is overshadow what can be really important at times, which is the assertive, decisive, the importance of those skills in high-performing leader. So I have this trademark now where I go, well, those strengths I have are great and I love those. And if my funeral, if people are talking about them, I'm happy with that, right? Because I care about people. But I also want to be a leader with a legacy, which is I've had an impact on this business. So there are times when I need to make difficult decisions and having the people around me at Leading Teams who drive that, are aware of it and help me and keep me going, keep me in check, that's really positive.
Yeah. And so you talked a bit about family. How has the immersive nature of being at Leading Teams and all the lessons you've learned, how has that changed your relationships with family, with friends? What impact has it had, do you think?
Yeah, I've always received good feedback from my wife.
Since joining Leading Teams?
Well, now that she knows a fair bit about what we do, but the thing about feedback is it can't be all developmental feedback. You need to actually reinforce the good things that are being done. Yeah. This is a big part of Leading Teams. It's like 80%, you're doing really well here. These are the little checks to remind yourself of where you're at. My legacy for my family, I just want them to know that I did things like got out of my comfort zone to try and get better. Even at my age, I just want them to know that I'm vulnerable, that I've made mistakes and that I've learned from those things. In the 2 years at Leading Teams, it's, as I said before, it's like 10 years to 15 years in my banking career. Yeah. Probably covers that, just because the impact it's had on me as a person and the impact on family and friends. Yeah, no, it's been profound.
It's made you a better person.
Well, I think I've always been a good person. No, I think it's making more effective, more effective person. It was a very good decision and I didn't want to count the clock down. I want to be thriving in my my last quarter of my corporate career and Leading Teams is enabling that. And taking that risk, as I said before, is really important for my family to see.
That was Dean Anderson, CEO of Leading Teams. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel.